Okay, this is Thuya. She's an Egyptian noblewoman and well noted. She is in an exhibit now, kind of featured in the Cairo Museum, along with their inner and outer coffins and such. And in fact, the actual mummies are there for you to look upon. It's kind of hard to look upon them, though, because they have this thick glass, and whenever you try to get up and get a down look on them, it's hard to get pictures and so on. This picture is kind of terrible compared to some, but used in this article that I'll continue to use. Where I've done about, well, she's featured in about 10 of my videos at least, and we've talked about her recently, so recently as talking about how the 18th dynasty ran through, and now how the genetics have come out on that of King Tutankhamun. In fact, this is his great-grandmother right here, and the grandmother of Akenaten. Have another video I'm working up on Akenaten and monotheism and such, but it's a different aspect of it. And in fact, looking at this picture, I could go off for an hour. In fact, if you watch some of my videos, you probably know I could make multiples out of this. I could talk about how the coffins are built themselves out of sacred cedar wood that's found up north of here, up in Lebanon and such, and how they had trades to do things with, and there was a reason for them doing it. And other sacred woods such as sycamore and things that I've already done videos about, sacred trees and tree worship and stuff that all these Caucasians have, where it comes from: ash, the oak, the yew tree, and how a lot of the Egyptian artifacts are also made out of these same types of wood. It has this commonality. I make connections with it and so on. But I could also talk about how when the Colchians were referred to by Herodotus hundreds of years after this, he noticed himself that they were the same people, and not because they had some curly hair, which we'll get into here shortly, and darkened or tanned skin, but because that wasn't unique to any people around there. He says what's really unique about them was their textiles, like you see the fabric here that's adorned across her chest, some of their rituals, and the fact that they practiced circumcision. In fact, he seemed kind of real proud that he had come up with this and found it out himself, and then inquired to each one about it. One remembered more than the other about it, but they were the same people essentially from the Wayback Machine somehow. But that fabric that's right there is intricate. It's like percale fabric. If you've ever had sheets and then you've had nice sheets, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of times pillowcases are made out of that nicer percale type fabric, and it's the fineness of each one of the threads, the softness of it, but then also the thread count per square inch basically dictates as to what they call this and so on. And this is a fabric that's seen all over the Caucasian type of world, but they also had this other fabric that was real see-through, and you see it in a lot of their depictions where the women are somewhat see-through and so on. And this is that gossamer fabric of the angels and all this that you hear about. You see these black chips all around her head here back in the coffin, and we could go off and talk about bitumen and how that's really a tar, and that they had shellacked and painted these mummies with tar. But now they've found out, and I did a video about this, so I'm just reiterating here, about how that bitumen tar is not just tar, but it has all types of herbs and things that are in it. Certain fragrances and fragrant oils are mixed in with it, and tar that's pine tar pitch, very similar to what somebody would use on a baseball bat, but refined into a way that you get that oil out of it, like refining oil basically, out of pine tree sap. And so they're basically shellacking these people. We could go off on mummification and its processes, and how using natron is really very much like taxidermy for that's what they use that same type of thing for today. And in the saltwater aquarium hobby, you know, raising Nemo and all that stuff, certain people use kalkwasser, a product that's very much similar exactly to it, and use it for adding calc or well, kalkwasser's mean is chalk water, but it's adding calcium and calcium hydroxide and alkaline to your aquarium. But you've got to do it extremely slowly and drip it in very small amounts, or you'll jack your pH up real high and all kinds of things like that. Because like an acid burns you, it's actually so alkaline that it'll try to burn you too. In fact, if you took your hands or fingers when they're wet and stick them in it, it will start burning you. And so they talked about some of these mummies had actually spontaneously combusted pretty much because of being put in this environment and then wrapped up and so on. All these things happened to them. But they talk about how she's beautiful. And you get, well, man, how could a mummy this old, you know, be beautiful? Well, one beautiful thing about it is that they preserved themselves so well, lest we probably would never hear the end of it. But if you've seen all these different mummies, and I've seen hundreds of them, she's one that's done so well, like Ramses and a few of the others that they noted are really, they've really got this art down. You can see here she's got her ear double pierced if you make it out right down there in the bottom corner, and you can probably barely make out as you're glancing down through the glass here that she has a reddish blonde hair. And so does her husband. This is again Thuya, and her husband is Yuya. But let's just get into this a little more, for we're going to talk about that last aspect, and I'll bring up other aspects as I've already done, and keep adding to it. Were these ancient Egyptian mummies chemical or natural blondes? It's a question that was asked. And a lot of people have asked this question. Many people try to dismiss it and not refer to it or make strange statements. And we're going to talk about one of them that's been captured on camera. And I'll go into it a little bit deeper. Egyptian noblewoman Thuya and her husband Yuya were important figures in Amenhotep III's court, and she is believed to have died around 1375 BC. Most widely known as being the great-grandmother of legendary pharaoh Tutankhamun. Her tomb was discovered in 1905 in a Channel 5 documentary called The Nile, Egypt's Great River, presented by British historian Bettany Hughes, has filmed a rare opening at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Now, whenever they did this, I did a video on it, but whenever I did, it got flagged because I used BBC footage, and so I had to try to dice it and do things with it, and it kind of came a little bit of a mess rather than being able to show you exactly what she said and I said. In fact, some of it's hacked pretty bad. It's another reason I felt about going into this again. But just straight up hair, I was asked about what's Caucasian hair in one of my other older videos, where it explains it kind of in there but doesn't go into it much. And there are three types of hair that's been classified by scientists and so on, you know, cymotrichic and all these terms that they had for it. And it's basically something like real straight hair, like Oriental people, and they have a hard time having a curl, to slightly curled, to body, to bouncy hair, to curly hair, to all the way up to the point of a fro type, and then kinky type of hair that you would find that you would see in black people, if you will, or negroids, which is even tighter in a Bantu type of knotting, has a zigzag pattern to it. And you can tell, of course, from a distance a little bit, but looking up under a microscope, you can easily tell the difference. Well, this episode aired on Friday night. That's whenever this came out in 2019, the end, and showed a team of Egyptologists carefully lifting the lid from Thuya's tomb. revealing what the Daily Star article called her incredibly well-preserved body. Bettany expounded. She said she's so tiny and perfect. A 2016 Ancient Origins article describes Thuya as the mother of Queen Tai, a key woman in the Theban court of Thebes, and is now thought that she might also be the mother of the pharaoh Ai. Now, Ai comes after Tutankhamun, and the shift that comes after that. Regardless, thus she would be Nefertiti and Mojnet's grandmother in the first place. We've done videos about Nefertiti, and now she, in her statue, had one blue eye. The strange thing also is that picture we were looking at before, there was this guy who found out, and by accident, the Egyptian blue reflects back real good, like old black light posters that people used to have, that it takes a certain orange and a certain yellow and a certain green and so on, but it phosphoresces under that blue light. Now, this is something that actually shows up to your eyes, but there's so much other light going on whenever there's any regular light going on, you don't perceive it much. But if you ever had both going on and then clicked off the black light or the blue light effect, it would change and everything would go more yellow and it would lose its luster. Well, this guy took one of these handheld lights that they've used, that even divers have used going down looking for corals and so on, because they phosphorus too, and went around in the Egyptian museum, and lo and behold, her eyes have been packed and then coated, and it was said that when he went by her eyes showed blue, but a lot of older statues too that they had. In fact, a picture, maybe I'll be able to get to it if I'll shut up and just go ahead and get through it, and I'll show you this effect. So Queen Tai, and everybody's made a big thing about her with her silver veil on her head. Queen Tai's famous bust that we have is actually made of yew wood, yew sacred to the elves and so on, and we've talked about all those type of aspects. We're talking about Thebes and these people that were running it. The people that effectively kicked out the Hyksos and got everything going, and we're at a few dynasties after that point. Colors of death. On the show, Egyptologist Salima Ikram explained that the cloths protruding from her eye sockets were made to look like eyes so she could see into the afterlife. Now, these are those eyes I'm talking about, the reflected back blue. And her body was so intact that it was even possible to see the sandals that she was wearing while being mummified. So she was real well kept. Now they have the other golden clad inner and outer coffins and stuff around there. There's a whole exhibit of an area going on now in the new museum that they didn't have before. There was supposed to be a picture there. And I think there's also still a picture of her feet, mummified feet, and you can see that they have the pieces of the sandals still attached to them, and if they showed them from the front, either the tasselature is still partially there onto them. We've shown you sandals collections, King Tut sandals, and who they have on them and so on, so we can keep crushing them with every step into the afterlife and everything that's said about that. But she's also missing the top of one foot here. They become real brittle and freeze-dried type effect. It's easy to crack them and things. And she is extra small. She's like 5'2" or something. Little bitty. They show it whenever they talk about it. And they're like, oh, she's so small, you can just tell. Bettany knows something strange about Thuya's mummified corpse. Rather than having dark brown hair like vast majority of other ancient Egyptian mummies, she had strawberry blonde hair. This is somewhat bizarre phenomenon was explained away by Egyptologist Ikram, who said it is unclear how her hair got to be this color, and she said, we're not 100% sure if that's her original hair. Now, of course, you can take a look at it and you can tell, well, somebody didn't after the fact stick it to her and it's not glued to her head. That is her hair. It's not a wig. Egyptian wigs are kind of famous, though. and they're famous for wearing certain wigs. We're going to get into that here in a moment. Another idea is that, of course, her hair might have been dyed, or that they put henna on her hair and so on. Well, if her hair was dark brown in the first place, it wouldn't lightened up to a strawberry blonde with henna on it. And they didn't have products like peroxide and hair dyes and things like that to where either one of these women talking could make their hair a myriad of colors to where it would really take back in the day. But also natron has been blamed sometimes, and it's been proven that that doesn't do anything. And of course, it doesn't change types of hair or straighten it out or anything like that either. Let's get into this. One of the reasons offered for the color of the hair is the use of natron in the mummification process. It's a naturally occurring mixture of sodium carbonate decahydrate, which is also an ancient household insecticide and a tanning type agent used for procuring all kinds of leather items, all the way up to like taxidermy and so on. It's primarily used for making leather and bleach clothing. So it has an effect on clothing and that fabric. In fact, it's used with water in a cask, and after they do the finalization of the fabric, they put it in there and take it out and then do a rinsing process, and it lightens from its tan type color to a lighter color that you saw there, although over the years it sure turned yellow. This implies Tuya's real true hair color might have been deliberately lightened to give a blonde look. Why would that be? Or may have occurred accidentally through mummification. Here we can see his casket, and one neat thing about his casket here, you can tell that it's got all these lines around it and everything, and it looks like it's made from a plat of wood, where you take something like 2x6s and keep putting them on top of each other, stacked up, but they're all cut out to go around his body. This is the one that if you look at a black and white photograph of his face head on, he looks like Abraham Lincoln. You can kind of see it in his face and jaw and nose here. Of course, his nose is a little distended, but yours would be too if they pulled your brains out through your nose too. You can maybe barely make out his blondish type eyebrows, but then his hair here is extremely blonde. Hands not in a pharaoh pose, but more over the top of him. And a lot of people have said a lot of things about Thuya and Yuya. In fact, they've tried to diss and write it off of them having been actual Egyptians, to say, well, maybe this is Joseph from the Bible and so on. But I've got videos about that too, and that connection cannot be made either. And then again, we're talking about somebody who has a lineage that goes back before it. They don't have a full attachment because, other than pharaohs and extreme nobility, a lot of people don't have names and stuff unless they get it put on one of their caskets and so on, and it'll tell you that they are relatives of so on, you know. But he would have passed from father to son, and it's very likely, and some have made the connection, that just 2 dynasties before would have been his great uncle, the not pharaoh but prince. For all the other children who don't become the pharaoh get all kinds of cush jobs, right? They're generally, it's not a cush job either. There's scribes, people that oversee certain things and so on, and it goes with nobility, and it keeps going down, down, down. So you can imagine over time they had this filter down, and always a constant. And we're sure not to let it get out of even royal lineages, to the point that people have noticed that there has been some interbreeding just to make sure of that fact, of pulling the most noble of people into it to try to make it happen. Strangely, in looking into that fact, they looked at Akenaten and King Tut's DNA, and of course that outcome was kind of hidden, but yet people that read on those same machines and stuff looked at the data, which they kind of showed on TV accidentally, and knew exactly what that was and which markers they were. But now that team that did that and didn't have it out has come out with another paper just this year. And Egyptologist 7 has come out with a video about it, and I did a video about it also. And ironically, I did a video about this dynasty and its findings a week before that came out. It was just kind of like I do often. I'll make a video like this and then something comes out. In fact, this article here was done in the same way whenever I had done one of the last ones, and I go, well, here they are putting the two things together that I had to search for to put them together for you. But it's a good time to put it in here. Mummy of Yuya had blonde hair. Now, blonde Egyptians, in the last section when I referred to the vast majority of other ancient Egyptian mummies having dark brown hair, well, I chose those words very carefully because according to Dr. Janet Davies from the Victoria Institute of Forensic Medicine, Australia, some ancient Egyptians were naturally blonde and sometimes even redhead. What's this? Well, here's Ramses, and they noticed chemically and everything that his hair had been repainted with henna to give back its color of the youth, kind of like a lot of people do worshiping Muhammad nowadays, who was a redhead too, by the way, but as a side note. But they took some of his hair follicles out and looked at it under a microscope, and they could tell even in the roots he still had red pigmentation, and he actually was a redhead. And they check out his skin, he doesn't have his full coating of tar on him, he was done so well, and he is a pale red-headed leucoderm. Well, how pale was he? Well, I'm sure he got a great tan living in Egypt, but hey, big deal. Reddish blonde hair, and it's well noted. Don't need to go into that too far. And this is just down the pipe of those same people that are all great uncles and kin to each other. Yeah. Sometimes they can't put it all together, but sure as hell the Egyptians did because they went through the trouble of making sure. And in doing those DNA tests, they were trying to confirm such things as, well, did they interbreed? Was this, was that? Who was the mother? Was this the younger lady? Was this Akenaten's wife? Was this King Tut's mom? And so on. And they ended up finding out, yes. Well, the haplogroup that they have is R1b, and that's European. Or people today you would find in Europe. And the mtDNA was K. Now, Thuya and Yuya show a slight variation on that, but being the great-grandfather and a couple of other males interacting in that, it could be different. But what they found was the mtDNA was still K, but the male form was G2. Yeah. So, pretty interesting when they found that out and it came out, but it didn't get put out as much. No, it's just kind of like a hush-hush, and they want to be a little bit ambiguous. An article recently published in the Sydney Morning Herald explains that most researchers claim different colors of the mummy's hair resulted from the chemical interactions in the mummification process itself, natron. However, Dr. Davy undertook a series of innovative experiments covering 16 hair samples from Egyptian people in the salty ash for 40 days, the exact time prescribed and talked about in the Book of the Dead and all that. Guess what? Not a single hair change was ever observed. Now, somebody supposedly after this, but they don't have all of this doctor backing behind them, took the same type situation and just left it in there for a year now, and they go, yeah, it's not changing. And what was strange about the original statement that they would all change is like, wow, so putting somebody in natron could take somebody from having black hair or brown hair to bleaching out to where it could become red hair and blonde hair, huh? But yet there's a lot of mummies that still have brown, dark brown, and black hair. So what the hell are you talking about? Because some of them, which went through the exact same process, are changed. None. Did they put a shower cap on them before they did it? What are we going to try to pull off here because of the variation shown? Again, ambiguous type things start entering the conversation. But we don't need to be. Dr. Davy is convinced that there were fair-haired Egyptians, but finding fair-haired mummies is kind of rare, and this is why Egyptologists previously believed that lighter hair color was created during the mummification process. Davy suggests that these blonde-haired folk lived in Egypt during the Greco-Roman period, 332 BC to 325 AD. What's amazing about that is that everyone that we've shown right now is not even from that period. It's from well before, just after kicking the Hyksos out. But we can go all the way back to Ginger, the pre-dynastic gebelien mummy, and he is blonde and has the same exact effect of hair. In fact, there are many shown all the way through this ideal. But that was her way to help write it off. It's like, well, maybe they were the Greekish kind of people. But no, maybe the Egyptians were kind of blonde-haired and blue-eyed Caucasians. So here she is. That's Miss Davies. Done all the experiments here and stuff with it. On December 14th, an ancient origins reported on a remarkable discovery in gamous necropolis, which I've done a video on, which lies along the eastern ridge of the Fayum Depression near Sela, Egypt. Dating to the time when the Romans or Byzantine Empire controlled Egypt from the 1st to the 17th century AD, this enormous necropolis or cemetery is believed to contain over 1 million burials, was excavated over 3 decades by archaeologists at Brigham Young University in Utah, who among their discoveries unearthed blonde and red-headed mummies. No, they kind of ambiguously say that out there too. What was weird about it, to them, it wasn't necessarily weird that they were finding blonde and red-haired and brunettes, auburn and stuff, because there are lots of mummies that have that, and it wouldn't have been like, wow. What was wow about it was that all the blondes were all separated over here, buried, and then over here there's all redheads. And over here are all the dark-haired people. What the hell's up with that? They also determined a long time ago, regardless of Greco-Roman or anything like that, these were the Egyptians that are passed down through time that had been there for a long time. Over 1 million of them in this one cemetery, but you can imagine a few different cemeteries that they used that are near this size that we're aware of also all over the place. And they've recently done genetic studies in one that was much further south, more towards the middle of Egypt, and leading from the middle dynasties all the way through. And again, it's showing Caucasians of a Mediterranean type or Anatolian type, which back in that time we've showed in other videos, like the one that shows at 6500 BC, these blue-eyed people are coming in through the Dill. They found them here, and look at all these artifacts. What's up with this? Well, 6500 BC predates all of this, and it makes the connection. Who were these people? Well, they're connected through the Natufians, and it looks like they had a lot to do with Catalhoyuk, and if you keep going way back, a lot to do with Göbekli Tepe, but that's another set of videos. Though he was discovered in 1905 in the Wayback Machine. There's a little video about him here. So let's just take a look at something here. Let's take a look at hair. Because what I did when somebody said, well, what is Caucasian hair? And I said, well, let me look it up. Hair types. And it showed hair on Wiki. So I thought I'd go there, and I never really thought that Wiki would go this deep with it. But this article is incredible, and it shows you the insides of all different types of hair and what it looks like, and the difference between wool of animals and human hair and straightened hair and so on of it. But it also goes into all the different types of overviews, follicles, the way they work, roots of hair, all kinds of things. It talks about a woman here with dark blonde hair, it says, but I would almost call that a red or a strawberry. But now this isn't the ginger we think of. In fact, it says the basal color appears brown due to higher levels of brownish eumelanin. So different types of melanin in the hair that comes out create different types of effect. And instead of a bright ginger, this is one of those darker reds. If it had more going on, it would go on to an auburn effect and so on. And it talks about hair types. And here's a black person with their kinky type of hair, right? And that's hair type 4C. So looking through this, what's odd is you come to find out that there's all these different types of hair, and it's kind of been reclassified now by Oprah Winfrey's hairdresser named Andre Walker. And so he's going from straight hair in his descriptions, 2 is wavy hair slightly, 3 is curly hair, kind of an S type, 4 is getting to a kinky type of hair, and then you have A, B, and C with each one. So A is the thing where it really is difficult to get holding a curl into it at anything, but then other people have curlier hair. Then you can get S pattern types of hair, and you can get kinky soft hair 4A, which is something like Shirley Temple or I don't know, Richard Simmons, or all these people that have type of froish looking hair, but it's real Caucasian hair. And then you have kinky, wiry type of hair and patterns with a Z sharp angles built into it, and how that is. So, you know, all the way from stick straight hair to slight curls to bouncy ringlets and all these descriptions, fine, medium, and coarse and thicknesses and so on, right? And it goes into all kinds of things. The cat picture that was up here, and how they have fine haired cats and other different types of hair, transparent hair of polar bears, and how that gives them warmth, and how the lighter hair of some Caucasians, it's believed, might let sunlight into the third eye, and all kinds of things, eyelashes, and some people's are doubled up, and how people like to enhance them like that nowadays. Even a naked mole rat, it talks about, people. Okay, so it goes into this like crazy. In fact, fine haired animals like foxes, and how that's referred to as fur, and how sometimes through the seasons they grow different type of hair and even change colors, and all this neat stuff that's about hair. So you wouldn't believe the crap that they went into. But in doing so, what's these pictures over here on the right? Oh wait, let's see. So here's a Caucasian. I guess you would call him a white guy. And there's some real curly type of hair too. And there's been some Egyptian wigs that have found that really have that kind of look to it, where it's got that highlights all in it and stuff. In fact, one that's famous has little ringlets all in it. But the one that we want to look at is the one before this. This is their picture for curly hair with that S's and ringlet situation. What is this? Well, its description tells you it's yellowish, curly hair and scalp from body which has had a long black wig over the hair. There's also parts of wig plait remains from Egypt. Abu Ghraib, probably tomb 23, 18th to 19th dynasty. That's what we're talking about. It's in the Petrie Museum, Egyptian Archaeology in London. What are we looking at? Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit without getting too bad. Yeah, it's a pretty good picture, actually. So, not to be too morbid here, but you can still see the scalp is still attached to this, and this is this person's scalping of their head that just came off of it, and it came off with all this hair. And if you look, that's all the same color till about here, and then it looks different color down here. It almost looks like there's another wig below that one and this one, or that person has real long hair. I mean, that's mid back reaching to your ass. There's also some pieces here which are darker and don't look like they go with this. In fact, they don't look like they go with the other ones of the other side. And so the other side here, you see somebody that you might say was a little bit more ash blonde and not so bright blonde. It's not really platinum blonde though, is it, ladies? But over here, it's got a reddish tinge to it a little bit. Quite often when a lady will bleach her hair from a dark brown like that curl at the bottom we saw, sometimes they'll come out to being those colors. Is that the effect of what it is? No, this is natural Egyptian hair they made some of the wigs out of. So you see that darker reddish brown there and ash blonde, but then down here at the bottom again we see something that looks a little bit lighter or changed, and I swear I still see a little piece of scalp that's in that too. Yeah. That could be just something else, but to me, that looks almost just like that scalp piece that's right here out of that. And again, this is described um, as yellow curly hair and scalp from which had a long black wig on it. So, in other words, this person that's a blonde had a black wig on. So when you see all those pictures of the wigs and you know about the famousness of it and things like that, this might lead to an idea of what was really going on. In a lot of the cases, not all, in a lot of the cases, but they've all been seen to have Caucasian type hair and some red, some reddish brown, some blondes, some brunettes, and so on. And the people that died here as after effects would have been in that mummies in the necropolis as blondes. But the one on the bottom right may be a redhead, huh? It almost looks like there's 4 wigs here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I swear it looks like one, top left-hand corner still has the scalp. That's the one they're talking about. But it also looks like maybe the one on the bottom right has a piece of scalp or something to go along with it. So this is hair. And they talk about how here it aids the entry of UV light during transition from dark to light and paler skinned people and so on. And that maybe this helped with transitions of things, all kinds of weird ideas here and misnomers they talk about. Here's a hair map on what hair would look like, I guess. And from the admix, it's in Arabian people. They have somewhat of frizzle or more hair, but nothing like this hair that would be over in this darker area here. But we can see Egypt has the same hair as North Africa, and pretty much all of Europe right there is the same color too. This is slightly different. You get that zigzag. What's this? Coarse, straight, cylindrical cross section. Ah. And then, well, that's in a modern day, and they're showing you this, but we all know this is Russia, and we can sure say that, oh, that's not the effect at all. You have to get way over here to the edge before you get to the Oriental people that would have the straight, flat cross section, non-curlyish hair, wouldn't you? And they wouldn't show up in the Americas either. My coarse, straight, cylindrical cross section. Don't understand that. You can also see that some of the islanders have slightly different hair variations. So there we go with hair, right? And believe me, it keeps going on in hair care products and what things and portraits of ladies that pluck their eyebrows and things from way back in the day. But interestingly enough, if we want to look up just hair, the example of curly hair that they're going to give us now, no telling how long this is going to be on here, but somebody freaks out and says, but are blonde-haired Egyptian scalps and wigs from the 18th dynasty. And again, this is the same time in question we were talking about, and ironically it goes through that. What time do we have through? 38? Got a couple more minutes. Well, let's do this. Let's go to DuckDuckGo. Why? Well, you can look up pictures. Blue-eyed Egyptians. Yep. There's a lot of pictures of it here too. A lot of these guys. And these oldest statues. These are from the 4th, 3rd dynasty. This right here is from the Akenaten II period, and they're blue inset eyes. These crystal eyes of all these scribes that are here. Again, I talked about Nefertiti, and you can see she has one blue eye. The other one fell out or whatever happened to it. Here's ancient Egyptian scribe. We're not too confused, are we? No. What if they had red ochre males and paler women? What would you think? Well, that's just like the Greeks and everybody had, so why would I think that they were anything different? Well, some people would like to think that there's something different, but not necessarily. So through that collage here, this is an Akenaten. This is pre-Egyptian, pre-dynastic. Yeah. So they didn't show up later. That idea that they might have showed up later is false. Look at all the blonde hair. Here's Thuya and Yuya right here. But Hatshepsut, Amenhotep, Thutmose, Ramses himself, even the pre-dynastic blonde gebelien mummy known as Ginger. Might be a better picture of that later. And all these blue-eyed statues. Oh, no fret. Look how pale she is. What? She's earliest dynasties here, people. Earliest dynasty. There's another picture of her here. And her husband, of course, has this thin mustache and stuff. You know, it's like this guy's got a thin mustache. You can see those crystal blue eyes. The marvel here is that they even were able to take crystal and form it anywhere like that. Sometimes people just go right past that point. I've talked about it in 4 or 5 videos, but made a video about exactly that. Now somebody had made a paper about this, that they were doing this all the way through the 12th dynasty and then just pretty much quit. And then there's this one of Nefertiti, and that's, so how did they, what? I mean, look at these realistic eyes. That's just incredible. The Sumerians had blue eyes. In fact, if you looked at blue-eyed gods, you get something that kind of starts blowing your mind there. But if you go through some of my other videos, you'll actually see where that is in fact. In fact, there's one of my videos on the left from me with my pencil pointing it out. But there's the Sumerians again. That's Rahotep. That's Nofret's husband. So he's done red ochre and she's done real pale. Yeah, just like all the art and everything. Yeah, it's just, that's the way it goes. That's it. All these redheads going down through. There was something I wanted to show you. Oh, there's another one of my videos there that also shows those. Oh, here's Rahotep and Nofret. Let's see if I can go in like that. So you can see how pale she is and how he's, oh God, it's just ruining every time I do that. But there's one other thing, and of course every time you pull this up it gets something different. So there's that blue Wajet eye, the blue talisman Wajet eye of Egypt, and that's been in effect forever. Blue Wajet eye. Here's something that looks a tattoo that's put on somebody that looks like a real eye. That's pretty good. Almost looks like Egyptologist 7's little moniker there, doesn't it? Well, let's see if I can show you something that looks more even like it. Doom, doom, doom. So there's Egyptian eyes, Egyptian eyes. Here's another. Did it again to me. Here's another pre